This is the story of how the richest man in West Africa, a man who built empires and owned entire cities, abandoned his mother in a mud hut for 27 years. But what he did next, it shocked the entire continent. Some say it was kindness, others say it was guilt. But no one expected what was buried beneath her house, and why the spirits warned him never to return home, until it was too late. Keep watching, because what you're about to hear is based on a true story that many villagers still whisper in fear. Samobaba Tales presents a billionaire's shocking kindness to his blind mother. In a remote village in southeastern Nigeria, there lived a woman named Mama Ebele. She was known for her kindness, her stubborn strength, and her blindness. Her eyes had clouded over when she was just 27, after a mysterious illness struck the village. Some said it was the gods punishing the land. Others believed it was poison from a jealous neighbor. But whatever the cause, Mama Ebele never saw light again. Despite her blindness, she raised a son, Obiajulu, her only child. The boy was quiet, smart, and always dreaming. They lived in a collapsing mud house on the edge of a cursed forest, where people claimed spirits walked at night. Yet Obiajulu never feared them. He would listen to the winds whispering secrets through the trees, and he believed they spoke only to him. "I will be great one day, Mama," he'd often say, holding her hand. And when that day comes, she'd reply, "Do not forget where you come from." But greatness has a price, and memory can rot like fruit. At the age of 18, Obiajulu left the village. He walked for 3 days through the forest until he reached a dusty road that led to Lagos. There, he vanished from memory like smoke in the wind. No one heard from him again. Years passed. The villagers assumed he had died, robbed, killed, or lost to the city's madness. Mama Ebele never stopped believing. Every morning, she sat outside her hut, listening for footsteps. Every night, she lit a lantern he once made out of scrap metal. It no longer worked, but she still lit it. "Obiajulu will return," she whispered, "when the spirits are ready." Obiajulu's rise to power. In Lagos, Obiajulu did not just survive, he conquered. First, he sold electronics on the roadside. Then, he flipped land with forged papers. Soon, he was importing oil and building skyscrapers. By age 35, he was richer than 100 kings combined. The media called him the silent billionaire, because he never gave interviews, never showed his face, and never explained his sudden fortune. But there were whispers, dark ones. Some said he made a pact with spirits in the forest. Others believed he had sacrificed something too valuable to speak of. A few claimed he could speak languages no human tongue should know. Obiajulu never returned to the village. He erased it from his memory, from his maps, and from his heart. But the spirits had not forgotten. And neither had Mama Ebele. One night, as Obiajulu slept in his penthouse, he had a dream. A woman, cloaked in ashes, stood at the foot of his bed. She did not speak, but her eyes bled tears of fire. Behind her stood a child, barefoot, holding a lantern made of bones. He woke up screaming. For 3 nights, the same dream returned. On the 4th, his business empire began to crumble. First, his banks froze his accounts due to a mistake. Then, a fire broke out in his data center, destroying millions in assets. The media turned on him. The government launched an investigation. But the final blow came from within. His own son, Adana, now 17, attempted suicide, leaving behind a note that simply read, "There's a woman crying in the dark, and she won't stop calling my name." Terrified, Obiajulu consulted a powerful seer, a blind woman from the northern deserts known only as the mouth of the sands. She took one look at him and said, "The land you ran from is calling you home. Your mother still waits, and so do the ones beneath her house." That night, Obiajulu packed a bag, called his private pilot, and vanished again, this time not into the city, but into the past. When his convoy of jeeps pulled into the broken village, the people thought ghosts had arrived. No one recognized the man who stepped out, dressed in silk, shoes worth a house, surrounded by armed guards. But Mama Ebele knew. From her blind eyes came tears she had held for 27 years. "Obiajulu," she whispered, "the wind said you'd come." But when he knelt to kiss her feet, the ground trembled. And beneath her heart, something moved. As the sun began to set over the village, shadows danced along the walls of Mama Ebele's collapsing mud hut. Obiajulu sat on a low wooden stool beside her, trembling. For all his billions, all his fame and power, here, he was still just a boy. And she was still his mother. But what he had forgotten, the land had not. That night, Obiajulu refused to sleep. He stayed in the hut with Mama Ebele, while his security team surrounded the compound. They had satellite phones, rifles, night vision, and motion sensors. But when midnight struck, none of those things mattered. Voices in the dust. It began with a faint scratching sound beneath the floor. Obiajulu dismissed it as rats, but Mama Ebele sat up straight. "They are awake," she said. "Who, Mama?" "The ones you left behind." Before he could respond, the lantern in the room flickered and died, without wind, without warning. Then came the chanting, low, whispery, ancient. Words Obiajulu had not heard since childhood. Words in a dialect no longer spoken, the language of the bone forest. He jumped to his feet and reached for his phone, but the screen had gone black. No light, no signal. Then the ground cracked. Not a massive quake, but a subtle opening, like the earth was exhaling. From beneath the floorboards, a thin stream of smoke, cold and silver, rose slowly, swirling around Mama Ebele's feet. And then she spoke in a voice not her own. "You took from the earth what was not yours to take." The secret ritual. 27 years ago, when Obiajulu was just 10, he had entered the forbidden forest at dawn. Not to play, but to bargain. At the time, Mama Ebele was dying. The illness that took her sight was spreading to her chest. No one in the village could save her. So Obiajulu, desperate and alone, did what no child had done for generations. He went to the Ala Iyi, the river altar buried in the heart of the forest. He brought a goat, he brought kola nuts, he brought his own blood, dripping from a fresh cut on his palm. And he made a promise. "Take my mother's pain, let her live. I will repay the debt with the greatest thing I own." The forest accepted. Mama Ebele awoke the next morning completely healed, though her sight never returned. The boy said nothing. He thought the forest had forgotten. It hadn't. The greatest thing he owned wasn't his toys, wasn't his home, it was his soul. And when he fled the village for the city without returning to complete the bargain, he broke the pact. The spirits waited and watched until now. The shocking revelation. Inside the hut, the floor finally burst open with a loud crack. Beneath it wasn't dirt. It was a chamber. 6 feet below the house was a sealed shrine, built from bones, charcoal, and stone carvings. Inside it, a bundle wrapped in red cloth pulsed with faint light. Next to it sat a pot covered in spiderwebs. Obiajulu fell to his knees. He remembered it now. That was where he made the offering as a child. That was the shrine he had built, guided by whispers. Mama Ebele turned to him, voice trembling. "You left it open, unfinished. I've been feeding the altar for 27 years, he gasped. Feeding it? With what? She didn't answer with words. She lifted her hand and revealed that 3 of her fingers were missing. It asked for blood, so I gave mine. A little, every moon. That was the price, for keeping you safe. Obiajulu broke down sobbing. All these years, she had kept the spirits calm, at her own cost. But now, the hunger had returned. The spirits wanted the original bargain fulfilled. Give what you promised, a voice whispered from the shadows, or lose everything. Obiajulu's choice. He fled the hut that night, racing into the bush, falling over roots and vines, his guards screaming behind him. They called in a helicopter. They tried to drag him back to Lagos. But as they lifted off, Obiajulu looked down at the hut and saw dozens of shadows forming a perfect cycle around it. Spirits. Watching. Waiting. Back in Lagos, he tried to return to business. Tried to forget. But one by one, everything began to die again. His youngest daughter choked in her sleep. His best friend went mad, muttering about forests in his dreams. His mansion caught fire, despite having no electricity outrage. Obiajulu finally realized there was no escaping a broken promise. Obiajulu had money, yes. But in the spirit world, money is dust. Gold cannot pay for broken pacts. But there was one thing left to give, his destiny. Obiajulu raced to the shrine beneath the floor, crawling into the pit as villagers gathered, chanting in panic. There, he did something no billionaire had ever done. He offered himself. Not his wealth, not his fame, his very soul. Take me, he cried. But let her live in peace. Let my mother breathe. Let the course end with me. Then, using a shard of glass, he caught his palm and dripped blood into the sacred bowl. The ground trembled. Smoke exploded from the pit. A scream, half human, half something else, pierced the night and echoed across the forest. Then silence. Total silence. The miracle. Mama Ebele sat up suddenly. Her eyes were wide. Then, she gasped. I can see, she whispered. The blindness that had haunted her for 27 years was gone. Her body, once frail and trembling, now stood tall and strong. But Obiajulu, he was gone, vanished. All that remained in the shrine pit was a single red feather. The shocking twist. For months, people thought Obiajulu had died. But strange things began to happen across the village. At night, the sick were healed by invisible hands. The poor found baskets of yams and gold coins at their doorstep. A mysterious voice whispered wisdom to farmers in their dreams, showing them how to harvest even in drought. And Mama Ebele, she never left the village again. She became the village's new spiritual keeper, telling her son's story to all who would listen. He did what no billionaire would do, she would say. He remembered where he came from, and gave everything back. The forest gift. Years later, a baby was born in the village. She had eyes like silver, and a strange birthmark shaped like the ancient shrine. They named her Obianuju, meaning, born in the midst of plenty. And when she touched the ground, the earth glowed. They say Obiajulu's spirit now walks with her, protecting her, guiding her, because in African folk tales, the greatest wealth is not gold or oil. It is sacrifice, legacy, and the power to never forget your roots. This was the story of Obiajulu, the billionaire who gave it all, not for fame, not for power, but for the love of the blind mother who once walked barefoot through the fire to raise him. In a world where riches blind the eyes of many, he saw what truly mattered. In the end, true wealth is not gold, but sacrifice, legacy, and forgiveness. If this tale touched your heart, don't scroll. Like, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe to Samubaba Tales for more African spiritual folk tales and ancestral mysteries. Because every story has a soul, and every soul deserves to be heard.